Welcome, everyone. I am Ingrid Honkala, and I am a Spiritual Awakenings International board member of the Spanish Committee, and Psi-affiliated group leader. Once again, welcome to the Spiritual Awakenings International Conference 2024, which has been amazing so far. So now we have the Spiritual Transformative Experiencers Panel with 4 amazing speakers. Our first speaker for this panel is Dr. Alex Burdyga from the UK. He holds a PhD in molecular physiology and 2 master degrees in molecular physiology and genetics. Since 2021, Dr. Alex has experienced hundreds of lucid dreams featuring spiritual phenomena akin to near-death experiences, including travel through tunnels, communicating with light beings, and much more. So I leave you with Dr. Alex to share his story.
Hello, everyone. Real pleasure to be here at this conference. So, my title of my talk is how my 200+ lucid dreams convinced me of spiritual reality. And really, this really starts off from, so the talk is about lucid dreams. And at least in my experience, they seem to correlate quite highly with near-death experiences and other related spiritually transformative experiences. And so I'm really hoping that this can help support the existing data about spiritual reality. And so, it's a great honor to actually speak at this conference. Now, in terms of if you're not familiar with what lucid dreaming is, definition of a lucid dream as in a lucid dream, a person becomes aware that they are dreaming and can consciously exert control over the apparent dream environment. And pretty kind of broad studies and surveys show that around about 55% of people actually experience at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. So they're pretty common. The only thing is that it was originally thought that lucid dreams is simply like a figment of your imagination. So scientists thought that simply it's a trick of the mind, or people were simply dreaming about being awake in their dream, but actually they were just dreaming that whole experience. But sort of studies, especially since the 70s onwards, so rigorous scientific studies, have confirmed that lucid dreaming is a unique state in which the body is asleep whilst the mind is actually awake and conscious. And they've done this through EEG monitoring, fMRI monitoring, eye movement experiments, and quite a few other experimental setups to actually show that it is indeed a unique state. Now, where my personal interest actually arises in lucid dreaming is that, as mentioned in the intro, around about 2.5 years ago, I started spontaneously having lucid dreams. And to date, I've had 263 carefully recorded lucid dreams. And what I find is that in this unique state, it seems to put my conscious awareness into the same or similar place as those who actually have had near-death experience and similar spiritual experiences. And as a result, whilst lucid dreaming, I've been able to sort of explore the spiritual landscape. And really, this is what this talk is about, to try and share some of the things I have found and confirmed from other fields. So yes, so I started having lucid dreams about 2.5 years ago. I've had 263 to date. And as I was saying, that it seems to put you into a unique state where your consciousness seems to be in a similar place as those who have had near-death experiences or similar experiences. And so as a result, you are in this kind of space where whilst you're lucid dreaming, I was able to explore this kind of spiritual landscape by doing several experiments. And some of the things I have kind of experienced, I would like to basically share in this talk. Now, ever since a young age, I was very much driven to find a truth, really kind of almost like a calling, where you just want to bypass your personal beliefs and you just want to get to the bottom of it for truth's sake. And so I think this is probably why I turned towards becoming a scientist. And also having a scientific background was quite useful, as, allowing me to carefully document my lucid dreams and to try to establish sort of consistent recurring phenomena. So very briefly, I obtained my PhD at the University of Liverpool, studying pancreatic cancer, and my main work was published in the journal BBA. And then I briefly went on for 2.5 years as a postdoctoral researcher at Oxford University, studying cardiac regulation, where actually we ended up publishing a first author paper in PNAS, which is quite a strong journal. However, I didn't actually continue as a scientist. I went from research into healthcare. And then after healthcare, after 3 years, I basically went off to try and start my own business. And this is really where the journey of investigating the nature of consciousness really began for me, because essentially I struggled so much to get the business off the ground. I started reading a lot of autobiographies from entrepreneurs who were successful. And very quickly, I found out that the main thing that really attributed to their success was their mindset and personal development. And so this led to further exploration of looking at mindset, books, materials, seminars. But very quickly, I found out that there isn't just the conscious mind, which everyone's familiar with. A much bigger kind of, that's just tip of the iceberg. The much bigger part of what attributes to people's success and so on and so forth is the subconscious mind. So I delved into a lot of research into that area. And that naturally led to discovering other fields, like, for example, the well-documented placebo effect, which seems to have such a large impact in patients, which is why the pharma industry has to do the double-blind randomized clinical trials, because just the power of your mind and what you hold in there can affect your physiology so much. And one which the modern science still cannot explain as to what's going on. Now, that led me to further research into quantum physics, which really is very fascinating because it really shows that the underlying nature of reality is very different to what our 5 physical senses are picking up. But it started to resonate very much with some of the core spiritual teachings which have arisen through various cultures over the last 5,000-6,000 years. And so naturally, I kind of got into reading about spirituality, and especially the latest sort of research, so related research, such as near-death experiences, shared death experiences, out-of-body experiences, terminal lucidity, spontaneous past life recall in young children, and about 5 other fields. And because I'm a very meticulous scientist who really likes to document everything, so to date I've covered over 200 books on the topics, nearly 400 lectures and talks. I've studied almost 200 near-death experience case studies, and over the last 5 years. And in the midst of all this, in the last 2.5 years, I've been very fortunate to have started having these spontaneous lucid dreams, where I was able to actually personally, subjectively experiment and try out some of these things I've been reading about from other sort of fields, and to see whether I can experience them myself. And this is really what this try to present some of the findings and experiences I've had. So in the remaining 10 minutes or so of the talk, what I'd like to do really, because of time limitation, is just to present one lucid dream account in a bit of detail, sort of to put you in, what I experience, and then to go through a couple of key findings from other lucid dreams. So one lucid dream I really wanted to share, which was around about 2 years ago now, which really started off in having a normal, regular dream where I found myself in a schoolyard, an old schoolyard from childhood. And what was strange about it was that there was actually this car kind of awkwardly positioned right in the middle of the schoolyard. And I think this is what triggered me to become lucid and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why would there be a car parked in the middle of a school playground? And this is where I became fully lucid. So I became fully aware and conscious that, hey, I'm actually inside a dream. So much like I'm very conscious right now that, I'm sitting on a chair, I'm in my room, I'm looking at my laptop, I'm doing this live presentation. In the same way, I was fully conscious and aware that I'm in a dream, Now, being quite curious and much a hands-on person, I decided to kind of do an experiment. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll use my hand and try and break the window just to see what happens. And so I tried to hit it once, nothing happened. I hit it a few times, and then the glass shattered. And I was really fascinated that, the level of detail was really comparable to waking life. The glass shattered, it fell on the ground. But very quickly, I thought to myself, well, I'm still here. Now, what shall I do next? And at the time, I was actually reading a book called Higher Self Now by William Buhlman, who's a very experienced out-of-body traveler, who's following in the footsteps of Robert Monroe, who originally wrote the book Journeys Out of the Body, who established the Monroe Institute, and of course, who originally coined the term out-of-body experience. And so I recalled to myself that in this book, Higher Self Now, he mentioned that whilst you're out of the body, you can actually say something like Higher Self Now, which can result in profound sort of experience. And so I thought I'd give it a go. And so I'm standing in the middle of this car park, and I say to myself, Higher Self Now, and absolutely nothing happens. Then I say even louder, Higher Self Now, and again, nothing happens. So I thought I'd give it one more try. And so I really kind of said very loudly, like, Higher Self Now. And to my surprise, the dream scene just completely dematerialized in a few seconds and kind of went into this kind of black void. And to my surprise, so what I didn't see anything, but this video is supposed to represent, I started to hear surround sound music, very elegant classical music, like in HD. And I saw nothing, but I could hear it very clearly. And after about 5 seconds, this music faded away, and suddenly I found myself traveling very rapidly in a vertically up direction, head first, through this very dark tunnel with very faint outlines on the outsides. And the G-force was quite substantial. And to be honest, I was quite startled because it was dark. I didn't know what was going on. I was, this is not something that I normally experience. But after around about 10 seconds, which felt much longer than that, I suddenly found myself again in a completely black void. All motion stopped. It was very strange. And within a couple of seconds, sort of this light orb just faded in. And the funny thing is, saying this account now seems weird, but in that state, it seems kind of normal. Like, oh yeah, there's just a black void and there's a light orb around 100 feet away, so 30 meters. But what was even more strange and startling to me was that in near perfect English, this light orb, which by the way had a very slight kind of facial resemblance towards the top third, in very perfect English and almost a very kind of bored tone, it said telepathically, here we're not in the physical and we can only talk to one another through sound. And I think at this point, the fact that, I was lucid dreaming, I was experimenting with a car, and then suddenly that faded out. Then there was music, then that faded out. I traveled through a tunnel, and then this light thing is speaking to me telepathically in perfect English. I got so overexcited that I think I basically, whenever you get overexcited in lucid dreams, often this can result in the collapse of the dream scene and you waking up. And that's exactly what happened to myself, unfortunately. But because I record everything like you with a dictaphone, I sort of recorded this experience and then I sort of analyzed it later on. And to me, it was quite striking because it seemed to correlate very highly with many sort of reports made in near-death experiences, where they say, for example, that they're traveling through a tunnel. I find myself traveling through a tunnel. And it wasn't just like a visual effect. It was a full-on with G-force and movement and motion. I found myself speaking, in NDEs, they report encountering intelligent beings and entities. Now, that thing seemed to speak English, so I assume it was intelligent, even though it didn't have a regular shape I was expecting. One thing that's interesting after having studied so many near-death experiences is that, at least I would say 50% would mention specifically that there was telepathic communication, and they make that very clear, or they try to describe using words that essentially resemble that is what's telepathic. And that's what I experienced as well. And finally, a good proportion of people also report hearing heavenly music or some sounds and that's what I experienced as well. So I think that was a very interesting case that really corroborates a lot of what other people report. But of course, some scientists will say that, but they were nearly dying. There was starvation of the oxygen in the neurons, and so they were hallucinating. But of course, I was not near dying. I was just having a dream. And I experienced essentially the same phenomena that they report. So very interesting there. Now, for the final 5 minutes of the talk, what I'd like to do is, after having had over 200 lucid dreams, I try to categorize them into different sort of key findings, but I realized I will not be able to fit it all in. So I had a sort of a choice from encounterings with loving light, independence from the physical body, properties of the etheric body environment, different communication modes like telepathic, negative hellish experiences, of which I've had 10 out of 263, which is similar proportion to what NDEs report. Manifestation of etheric objects with the mind and thoughts, seeing hyper-real details, hearing angelic choirs and heavenly music, traveling modes in etheric environment, taste and texture of etheric food. That's a fun one. Examining etheric text and images, and finally effects of meditation and chanting whilst in that state. I thought probably the most relevant ones to cover in the following couple of minutes is encounters with a loving light and independence from the physical body, because again, this is something that's quite commonly reported in near-death experiences and really gives us a larger insight into the nature of consciousness. So the first one then is encounters with a loving light. Often, or a good proportion of NDEers will actually report that they, at some point in their experience, they will find themselves either by a bright source of light or enveloped in light. But what's very striking is not the light aspect, but the fact that they say there was a profound sense of peace and an incredible intense sense of love that they experienced. Now, in one of my lucid dreams, I essentially kind of made a request, and I said, I'd like to see an archangel. I made a request a couple of times, which then resulted in rapid motion, but this time not through a tunnel and only for a couple of seconds. And suddenly I found myself kind of being surrounded by this warm kind of light. It was white light, and there was some hues of a bit of gold tinge and a bit of purple as well, which was quite lovely. But then right before the lucid dream ended, there was this really powerful surge, experientially what felt like in my chest, of love, of this energy just going through me, which to me, when I compare it to my everyday experiences, this was probably the top 3, maybe, top 5 of my entire life. So it was very strong feeling of love, even though it was only for a few seconds.
Dr. Alex, you have 1 minute left.
Yes, no problem. So the final, another one is the independence from the physical body. So a lot of NDEs report that they basically, okay, with 1 minute left. So in this slide, essentially, I was once had a very high-grade fever, and I had combined with vertigo, migraine, and nausea, and so much so I couldn't get physically out of my bed. But luckily for me, during early hours of that morning, I had a lucid dream, which, interestingly enough, I felt completely healthy and 100% fine, with no disorientation, no migraine, no nausea. But when I woke up and for the rest of the day, I felt absolutely terrible again. And again, in NDEs, people actually report that often, when they have a horrible accident, they will feel terrible. When they're out of the body, they're absolutely fine. When they're back in the body, they're once again feeling bad. So in conclusion, at least based on my observations, but especially when we consider the overwhelming amount of solid data through NDEs, STEs, OBEs, and 10 other really fields, current evidence strongly suggests that, 1, consciousness appears to be independent of the physical body and is primary. In other words, it's not as a result of neuronal activity, but the other way around. And 2, there appears to be other realities where consciousness can reside. And so reality seems to be a lot more fascinating than previously thought, as consciousness appears to continue on elsewhere after bodily death. And it seems like it's even likely to be the very source and substrate out of which our reality arises. And so with that, I'd like to thank you very much for allowing me to speak at this conference, and a big thank you to all the organizers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alex. That was fascinating and very, very informative. So now I would like to ask you to please, if you want to write your questions in the chat, you're welcome to do that. And at the end, we will answer all the questions. And then our next speaker for this panel is Dayna Dunbar from the US. She's an award-winning spiritual novelist. Her latest book is called Awake, The Legacy of Akara. In 1994, Dayna had an encounter with an extraterrestrial being of light in Sedona, Arizona, who instructed her to tell spiritual stories that she will share with us in her presentation today. I leave you with Dayna.
Thank you for this just honor of being here and telling my sacred story. I just want to set the context of before this happened, right before this happened. I was 29 years old. I was working in San Francisco. I was on a spiritual path, but I'd never had any spiritual real experiences that were, beings coming to me, psychic. I didn't have any spiritual experiences as a child, nothing like that. But I was meditating, and I, was in connection with the divine. And but 6 months before this event, I actually had this energy start coming. Whenever I closed my eyes to meditate, this energy just came to me. And it was a female. She was loving. She told me her name was Kaya, but really all it was just this beautiful essence of energy and love. And like, she would love me so much. It was amazing. And I told some friends about it. I was like, I don't know what's happening, but this chick, she keeps coming to me, and I don't know. I guess she's my guide or angel or something. And it was so new to me. So and I was in a new relationship with my girlfriend, and we went to camp in Sedona based on a coworker telling me about this magical camping spot. We were up about miles away from anybody. This is the camp spot, 360-degree views of these spires. The pictures are old because it was 94. So this was the medicine wheel that was already on there. Okay, go ahead. And then this is my girlfriend, Chris, and me. This is our selfie at the camp spot. We were sitting at our campfire. And then, okay, one more. And this is me meditating in the medicine wheel. It was just so magical. And so we were there for about 3 days, 10 days total, but we were there for about 3 days. So really dropped into the energy, nature. We were in the rhythms of it. We were super connected in the loving with each other. We happened upon a meditation one day. It was hot out. We went to a New Age bookstore, which is the thing to do there. And there happened to be a meditation happening. We did this beautiful meditation with this lovely man. And at the end, he called in a mothership over the building. And we were just looking at each other like, whoa, can you believe this? It's so Sedona. And he ended up being this guy who is an experiencer with UFOs big time. And he'd written a book about it. So we thought that was cool. We went back to our campsite, and at night it got, the stars are just absolutely stunning. I was looking up at the Scorpio constellation in this it was kind of on the horizon. It was absolutely gorgeous, and there was this orange star up there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's a totally different color than I've ever seen before. And in the moment that I looked at it, it started to move. And it started to kind of swim like this away. And I told Chris, and she said, oh my God. We were both like, oh my God, it's moving, it's moving. Like, it was totally blowing us away. And we were like, is it possible that it's a plane? And it was not. It was like doing this motion and really quickly. And I just something came through me. I blurted out, we see you, if you want to communicate, we're here. And immediately it turned around and started coming back toward us, which made us even more like, but we felt this peace about it, this energy that was very peaceful. It was never like, even though we were freaked out just because it was so shocking, but there was this energy of peace. So it came back, and it came back all the way and straight in front of us. Our chairs are here, the fire's right here, and then it just was right in front of us. And this orange thing, I couldn't see a metal or anything it was made of. But it was just this light that was spinning. And then we saw two more appear above it, and we couldn't tell if they were further away or if they were smaller, but they were just above it. So it made this triangle shape. And I told Chris, I said, they want to talk to you, because she had one experience where she did astral traveling just spontaneously. And while she was meditating, and I was like, they want to talk to you, I just totally disowned my own power in the situation. I was freaked out. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I was just like, I know they want to talk to you. You should go out to the medicine wheel. And she's like, okay. And she went out to the medicine wheel, and she laid down in it, which is how she meditates. She laid down, and within seconds, I'm like riveted watching what's going to happen. I see a beam of light go up from her body to the ship, and then come back down like a circuit. And I knew she had done this traveling, energy traveling up to the ship. And I went, oh my God, you be good to her. And I heard a voice in my head go, and it kind of laughed and said, don't worry, we will. And I recognized the voice, and it was the being that had been coming to me for 6 months. She was, and I said, Kaya, is that you? And she said, yes, it is. And I was just like so blown away. I was just could not believe this. So we started having this conversation about, I said, who are you? What are you doing here? And she said they were Pleiadian, but they're extra dimensional beings. And she said they're here because this is a hot spot in the universe, and that they were watching what's going to happen to humanity, but not only watching, but here to support the light, but that they were not going to interfere directly at that time. Keep hoping that this will change as the veil thins here, but we're not going to interfere direct, come down directly. But she said, and like made it clear that this was this opportunity that very rarely happened for them to be able to actually communicate with me, with, people like this. It's something, it was just this combination of events, this perfect combination. And so, but mainly it was light and just love. It was just like this overwhelming love. I've never experienced anything like it again in my life. So at some point, the light stops with Chris, and she gets up and walks over to me, and she tells me what happened on the ship, which I'm not going to tell because I don't have time. It was amazing. She met a male being, and it was a very similar engagement, and so much love, and it's so profound, totally transformative for her. So I told her, I said, I was in the middle of a conversation with Kaya, and I got to go, I want to finish it. So I went out to the medicine wheel, and I sat down, and I said, I'm ready, like, bring me up, and I heard her, go, like, it was literally like, kind of, wait a second. And I could tell she was conferring with whoever, her people. And she came back to me, and she said, you can't come here. And I was like, so crestfallen. I said, why not? She got to. And she said, because your nervous system wouldn't be able to handle it. It would just blow you out. And I went, okay, well, can you come here? And she smiled. I could tell she was so excited because she said, yes, I can. But if I hadn't asked, she wouldn't have come. I know that. So I closed my eyes because that's how I'd always experienced her before in meditation. I closed my eyes and I feel this presence in front of me like stronger than I ever before. It was so profound, so beautiful. And I realized, oh my God, she's here, actually here. And I opened my eyes and I could see her energy body. It was just shimmering. And I saw this filament of light on the side of her head and like her neck and shoulder, but not very much. It wasn't very clear at all. And then I saw, this was like the coolest thing. The fire was burning behind us, and right then the wind blew the smoke over her, and so like a beam of light, flashlight in the smoke, it made it, you know how it makes it seem solid, right? The light seems solid, you can see it. I saw her whole face and her torso and her neck. She was very long and lean, hairless, but beautiful, big eyes like this, beautiful, beautiful. And long neck. I just was totally breathtaking. I mean, that just sent me over the top. And then she reached out to me because I could tell she wanted to hold me so bad. I mean, she looked at me like I would look at like a baby snow leopard walking out of the woods, just being like, oh my God, you know. It was like she was so in love with me and fascinated with me, as much as I was with her. And so she reached out her hand and she touched my shoulder right here, and it went into my body. Her energy went into my body, and my energy body started going like this. Like I felt like my head was going back and forth like this. And I said, I can't handle that. You can't touch me. And so she pulled her arm out like with this, like, you know, she wanted to like gobble me up, you know, into her arms, you know. And I was like, and we just sat there in this absolute blissful connection and love and presence that was just beyond breathtaking. And finally she said, you know, you should get back to Chris now. And I said, okay. And I got up and I walked back to the fire, and we just, I mean, tears, you know, flowing. And we just watched, and these ships, they put on a light show for us. After that, they were just flying all around and coming in and out of, you know, just popping in and out and doing all these crazy movements that were just impossible, you know, to the laws of physics. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, we finally crawled into the tent. And then it's just so mind blowing. And then in the next day, we got up and we went and journaled the whole thing. We wrote down the entire experience, just both of us together. And I got downloaded. I was journaling, and I got downloaded at that time from Kaya that I needed to start writing, and I was going to write about these beings. So that's what I've done. I started writing, even though it's very insecure. And I have 3 published novels, and the last one is finally about them. I couldn't write about an awakened civilization. It took my own growth. And it took spiritual growth and healing, and it took me becoming, you know, skillful as a writer to be able to pull this off. So I would love Ken to show the book trailer for it now, so you can see the inspiration that happened, and what the book is that came out of this. So yeah, so it was just what I was told was I needed to write this epic adventures in order to get to as many people in the mainstream as possible, like Star Wars-like adventures about this awakened civilization and how it interacts with Earth and saves the planet. So it's a big epic sci-fi adventure that she guided me to write. And so yeah, that's it. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate having this opportunity.
Wow, thank you, Dayna. That was very powerful and very, very beautiful recount. So now, as our next speaker in this panel, we have Omar Angulo from the US. He's an author, artist, actor, and musician. From a young age, Omar was tuned with the spiritual realm. After his brother's suicide in 2019, this awareness intensified. When he considered taking his own life, beings visited him and revealed a deeper plan. I leave you with Omar to share his story.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. It's an honor to be here with you all, especially, when I heard Dr. Yvonne Kaysan mention that it's the birthday of spiritual awakening. Today happens to be my birthday as well. So I'm honored to be spending it here with everybody. So I'm going to get right to it because, it is a little bit of time that I have to share this story. So I'm just going to touch on the key factors. I don't need the screen shared yet. So I'll do it at the end. Hopefully I'll have enough time. I do have a few slides to show. So as Ingrid mentioned, on 2/16 of 2019 on the morning, it was a day like every other day. I went for a hike. That morning on my way home, it was funny. I stopped. There was this building, this business that had, the address was 888. And for some reason, I stopped to take a picture of it at a certain angle. It looked like only 18. And I posted it on social media and I put, not everything is as it seems. So this tied into what was going to happen starting with that crazy day. So anyways, I went home later on that day on 2/16 of 2019. This woman that I had barely met, maybe a couple weeks, she messaged me, earlier that week I had asked her out and I guess she was busy. So that day she messaged me and I guess I already knew that she was kind of messaging me for that. So we agreed to go out. When I met with her at a restaurant, we sit down right before the food even comes and we start eating. I get the phone call. It's my brother's wife. She's hysterical. I somehow make out what she says before the phone hangs up. And the girl sitting across from me, she's looking at me. I think she already knew. And then I tell her, oh, I guess they just told me my brother's, he passed away. And then, she looks at me with a lot of compassion, and I tell her, I guess I was nervous. So I'm like, what a first date, right? And she kind of just looks at me with her eyes filled with tears. And, she happens to be someone that's very spiritual. I didn't know to what level, but she was a psychic medium. She offers to take me to where my brother, and all the things that happened for us to be at that place that was closer to where my brother's house. So when she offered to take me, we get there before they take the body out, right? So she's telling me all these things that my brother's saying. About a week later, a medium corroborated everything word for word. So it made me believe, like, 1,000,000% that everything she was saying was accurate about what my brother was telling me. So we get there, right? And then after that, I'll just, like I said, I'll skip ahead. So that happens, right? My brother on, and I'm kind of in my head because here I am, spiritual, I've had premonitions everything since I was little. I'm very tuned in. So I was really upset at the spirit world as to why they didn't warn me. Like, why would you do that, right? And then I realized about a week later, things happened that made me realize I had a premonition about 9 months before. It was the first time in my life I woke up with my whole face covered in tears. The whole face, I was making that distorted face you make when you're crying like your heart out, right? But in that dream, my brother was the only one in there. So I thought like half the world, that there had been this catastrophic event and half the world must have, they must have died, because that's the only thing that could explain the pain I felt. So I was like, wait, they did warn me. So then I failed. Did I fail to save my brother's life? Because they did give me a warning. So then I was stuck in that, right? So fast forward, you know, my brother, he was in the military for 20 plus years. So they just, you know, signed it off as PTSD. Because he was in the military, it was going to take a while to put his body to rest, right? So at the military cemetery. So in between then, all his friends, you know, I never really go on Facebook, but all his friends started messaging me, hey, I just found out what happened, you know, all this and that. So I was responding to them. Okay. While I was on Facebook messaging with my brother's friends that wanted to know what happened, because he was the last person in the world anyone expected to do that, I hear a voice tell me to message one of my friends, but I say no, because they didn't even put my condolences, nothing. So here I am throwing a little like temper tantrum to whatever this voice is saying. No, I'm not going to message them. They tell me, if you don't message your friend, you're going to regret it. I said, fine. Hey, how's it going? Okay. So after that, somehow I made, because I went back and looked at the message, nothing to show that he was going through anything. I call my friend and I'm like, somehow I made it out, and I tell him, I'm going to go to you. He lived a few miles away. When I get there, you know, I practice my native culture. So I had some sage with me. I saw he was going through something. I start smudging him off, right? I like the sage, starts cleansing out his energy. He looks at me and he tells me, I think God or an angel sent you here. And I was like, oh, wow. So instantly I knew, like, you know, he was basically telling me like I was there to save his life. And I saw that he was going through the same thing my brother had gone through. So instantly I believed him. I said, okay, wow, angels and God sent me to save you, but they didn't send me to save my own brother. So instantly, that's when I threw my tantrum at the universe. I was like, fine, I'm going to take my own life, right? So after that, you know, I held it together while I was there with my friend, but I was so upset that because it wasn't the first time that happened. It happened throughout my life where they put me to help people. So if I had listened, right, all throughout my life, you didn't send me to help my own brother. How dare you? So I threw my tantrum. When I threw my tantrum that night, you know, I had decided, and that's when I was visited, right? I was visited by this being that looked like a major or a colonel. You know, I thought it was an angel at the time. She took me to where my brother was, you know, in the spirit world, as I call it, right? And the other side, you know, and it was all telepathic. She just gave me a nod, go ahead, talk to your brother. And instantly when I woke up, it was like everything was downloaded, right? In my closet, I didn't have a door. I just had a pull-up bar because, you know, that for the pull-up bar. So I look and I see something peeking in my closet, and I knew it was this frame thing. So I go to get it, and before I even open it, so I pardon my language, I'm not gonna say it, but I look at the thing and I'm like, no effing way. Before I even open it, I knew already. So when I open it, it was from when I graduated in the military, and the date was 2/16. So I was like, wait a second, what are the same day my brother took his life is the same day I graduated from the military, and it was exactly 12 years prior. So right away, everything was in there. It was like, okay, I know that the clock goes to 12 and it repeats. I know that the months go to 12 and they repeat. I know that we go from first grade to 12th grade, and then it's higher learning here in the US, right? So I was like, okay, so you're showing me that my brother graduated. Just like I graduated in the military, you're showing me that it was a graduation. So that's what this is. This is a school. This is that, right? So, you know, all that. And then after that, all these other things started happening, right? But in less than a month after we put my brother's body to rest, there was this famous musician that I had never listened to his music, but he was murdered. After he was murdered, I started hearing his voice. So I was like, what's going on? Like, because after my brother passed away, I became very sensitive. The veil dropped completely for me. I was as psychic as it gets. I had all the clair, everything, because I think I wanted to connect with my brother so much that there was nothing that was going to stop me from connecting with him. So I was as open as, that's why these beings were communicating, all this stuff, right? So I thought this artist that had passed away, I was supposed to maybe get in touch with his family or something, but I had never listened to his music. So I went down the rabbit hole. He was more of a street artist, a street rapper. I had outgrown that phase of my life, so I wasn't really resonating with his music, but I think I heard something that I did like, so I was like, I'm going to buy one of his songs because, you know, he does have some good stuff. He's very inspirational. Somehow I'm hearing him, so there's a reason. When I go to get his album, I mean, just to download a song, he only released one studio album, and he even was nominated for a Grammy. And the album was released on 2/16 of 2018, the year before my brother passed away, and it was called Victory Lap. So I was like, wait a second, my graduation, my brother's graduation, this artist Nipsey Hussle's victory lap. So I'm like, wow, okay, so my brother completed what he had to do. This artist completed what he had to do. Here I am. So I was like, wow. After that, so I don't know how much time I have, but I'm going to try to fast forward. So, after that, I saw that it was all an agreement. So they showed me clearly that somehow me and my brother had agreed to this. What I considered the worst day of my life, it was all in agreement. This is the way it was written. They had to show me that, so I knew there was nothing I could do to save my brother, or whatever. I couldn't even tell my family, because how do I explain to my parents that are in grief that me and my brother had agreed to this before we even came? There's nothing we could have done, but I needed that because, like I said, I had gone to a dark place, right? After that, it started popping up everywhere. I realized after a year, the pandemic hit, and then it got really weird because it wasn't just about this whole thing they showed me about this being a school. It was also tied into my whole life. That's where it got complicated. I don't know if Ingrid mentioned, I do acting as well. So in 2017, I had acted on a show where there was a pandemic. Everyone was quarantined. All this stuff was happening. The episode after the pandemic started, I went back to look at the episode because I was like, whoa, this is freaky. I worked on a show where there was a pandemic and everything. And the episode was episode 216. It was the season finale episode, season 2, episode 16, pandemic, all this stuff, right? Then it went back to the group that inspired me to do music. I've done music for over 20 years, written over 1,000 songs. The area code where this group lived was area code 216. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Then it got even weirder. I remember like something whispered in my ear when we were little and I was in 8th grade. We went to Mexico City. We went to the pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun. I remember wanting to climb that pyramid on the tallest rock I could find. When I went to look at it on the Britannica website, it said the height of the pyramid was 216 feet and in parentheses, 66 meters. 66 was my brother's birthday. 216 was his departure date. So in this pyramid was not only the day he left, but the day he was born. And later on, this started happening a lot, right? It was 216, 66. I looked at a piece of paper that we all use, the 8x11, it's actually 216 millimeters. I look at the 4K resolution, it's 2160. So 216 started showing me that it wasn't only tied into my life, but universally, right? Like permanent, like kind of things that are happening, like the pandemic. Going back to Plato, Plato said that 216 was the perfect number. I believe Dr. Moody kept mentioning Plato, and I was like, wow, what a coincidence. I'm going to mention Plato. So it started showing me by the end of everything, it wasn't almost like just a pre-planning of me, but it also showed me whether I was in past lives leaving myself little cookie crumbs, whether I was there helping with the pyramid construction in ancient Greece, right? Ancient Greece. So it just kept happening to where it was tied into everything in the world. I think even the diameter of the moon is like just shy of 2160. It's like 2159.2. So I don't know, they actually went up there and measured the moon, but the moon is 2160, like less than a mile from it as well. So that's why I called it, like I said, the book shows proof. For anyone that doubts that there's a communication after death or that there's no pre-planning or past lives, I think I show, even in the book, right, unequivocally, beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's there. I think I talked about everything. Oh, even the other, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, I went to go buy a car that, there was a car I was interested in. Out of everything, the license plate said 216. So everything I go do, it's like a reminder, because I think I was supposed to talk about this. It took 4 years until I finally wrote the book. So the universe kept poking at me. Hey, and then finally I put it all together. Oh, this is the most important thing I forgot to mention.
You have 1 minute left, Omar.
Perfect. Okay, so this is the most important thing. In between that, I had a vision, Alex mentioned about it feels more like a lucid dream, right? Because I'm very conscious about what's going on. But I was with this ancient man in what appears to be the Akashic records, right? Endless books. You can't even fathom the amount of books there is. And we were on the floor. We had over 100 books all over the floor and trying to put all these pieces together with the ancient man. After I was writing the book, I realized he was showing me what was going to happen, because had this been 20, 30, 40 years ago, there's no way it would take hundreds of books all over the floor to show all these things connected the way we're able to show now in the age of the computer, right? So this ancient man was showing me, you know, years before the, you know, kind of like the death, what we were about to do, that we're going to put this together now because it had to happen now in this information age where we have the computer. Anyone can Google anything I'm saying and see that it's 100% accurate. All the findings, I have over 100 or hundreds of findings to show what I'm saying. Like, it's impossible. You have a better chance of winning the lottery 100 times than all these
Oops.
I'm showing. That's
Thumbs
it. Thank you.
Oh, wow, Mar, thank you so much and happy birthday.
Thank you.
This was an incredible recount. And then, yeah, we have to pay attention to all the synchronicities. That's the important thing right there. So our last speaker for this panel today is Ken Bell from the US. He is a marketing executive, designer, and writer. 10 years ago, Ken had a breathtaking spiritual awakening in a parking lot. Years of tragedies had left him hopeless and suicidal. Then one critical message showed him the hidden magic of the universe. He woke up and he is today with us to share his story.
Well, thanks everyone for being here. This is an exciting day. So a decade ago, I had a significant shift in my life. And amidst a series of tragedies, I had this profound mystical awakening in a parking lot. And in that one moment, I became one with the universe. And that's when my life changed permanently. So I'm going to tell that story, and then I'm going to talk about how I moved from despair to a new spiritual awareness. And then I'll talk about whether I think this kind of awakening is possible for everyone. But in short, this is the story of a lonely and depressed kid growing up in the New Mexico desert. So I had a loving mom, but I had a dad who was always angry and distant. And I grew up feeling unworthy of love. And I think mostly that was because I never was able to gain my father's love or approval. But all I really knew as a kid was that I needed an escape. I had to somehow get out of this desert I had found myself in. So like many kids, I came up with a plan for my life. And it was what you'd expect. It was college, career, marriage, family, all the things. But I was convinced that if I just followed these steps, that I'd eventually find happiness and feel loved. So I set about going through these steps. And for my career, I chose youth ministry, working in churches with teenagers, because as a kid, the church was one of those few places where I felt really accepted and loved by something that was larger than myself. And eventually I met a girl, graduated college, we got married, and within 2 years, I was running the youth programs at one of the largest churches in Texas. So, hey, my plan was working, right? Well, you might have heard this old saying, man plans, God laughs. And what I like about the image on this slide is that I can't really tell here if I'm about to experience a terrible storm or a beautiful sunset. But as you might guess, my plan started to go sideways. And over the next few years, in quick succession, I was fired by the church that I worked for because I just didn't fit into their big money culture. I developed chronic back pain. I discovered my wife was having an affair with her boss. I began drinking too much, and then I went through a very painful divorce. So it was most definitely not what I had planned for my life. So it's time to start over. And soon enough, I met a lovely woman. We got married. We had 2 beautiful daughters. I started rebuilding a career in marketing. Eventually, I got my dream job working in motorsports, where I got to hang out with celebrities and race car drivers. That was really cool. So, hey, my plan was back on track, right? Except, remember those clouds on the horizon? So yeah, the storm finally hit. And in a short period of time, my second wife's mother suddenly died of pneumonia, and my wife discovered her body. My father was diagnosed with cancer and then died suddenly within a month. My mother began suffering with pretty significant dementia and moved in with us. My wife's sister then mysteriously drowned in a pond. And then the sister's partner took her own life in despair. And so you can imagine with all of that, my wife spiraled into a really dark place because she had lost her mom, her sister's partner, and now only had her father left in her family. Meanwhile, I was drinking too much. I was working too much. We began to struggle in our marriage. And eventually, my wife decided the only way she could really rebuild her life was to do it on her own. And so ultimately, we separated. I continued to battle with anger, alcohol, depression. And so finally, my wife moved out and she moved into a brand new apartment complex. And on her first weekend away, she had our girls with her. I got a call from her early Sunday morning. And I was groggy, I was hungover, I'd been drinking the night before, but I could only make out 2 words that she was saying. She fell, she fell. But my wife was really panicked. And what I finally understood from her is that she was telling me that our oldest daughter, age 4 at the time, had just fallen out of the 5th story window of my wife's new apartment. And so I raced to the apartment. Paramedics came. Our daughter was airlifted to Children's Hospital in Dallas. I was able to ride along on the helicopter, and I'm just praying the whole time, please, God, just please don't let her die. Just please don't let her die. We got to the hospital to learn that both her lungs had collapsed. She had a broken arm, broken ribs, broken pelvis, and broken foot, all on the right side of her body. We were told that she may not survive, or if she did survive, she would likely have brain damage and would never walk again. So we settled in for days, weeks, months. We didn't know how long in the hospital. Early in that period, I decided to go back to the apartment because I really wanted to understand for myself what had happened here. And so standing outside that building and looking up, I thought I could put it together. And I think what happened was, as she fell, her right foot caught the edge of a concrete planter, and that turned her body in such a way that she was able to fall only on her right side in the flower bed. And so what that did was that spared her spinal column and her brain. So meanwhile, back at the hospital, her prognosis just kept getting better by the day and really almost by the hour. And to shorten a very long and very scary story, my daughter went home from the hospital 8 days after her fall. She went home on her 5th birthday, and we were still able to have the party we had planned for her. She went on to walk 13 days after the fall, and she went on to a complete recovery within 2 months. So my daughter's survival was truly what you could only call a miracle, but I didn't really want to believe that because I just kept thinking, why would God grant me a miracle? I'm just not worthy of that much love. And so despite my daughter's miraculous recovery, I just continued to sink into despair because yes, I had my daughter, but I was struggling to make sense of my life. I was in the middle of finalizing my 2nd divorce and just felt like a failure. Meanwhile, around this time, my father-in-law, my ex's father, died in a car wreck, which brought more grief and tragedy to the family. And I was a single father just trying to figure out how to parent and co-parent 2 little girls through all of this tragedy. And so I was deeply depressed. I had thoughts of suicide. And I just kept thinking, this is not how my life was supposed to be. My plan that I had worked on just did not work. And I was just in this very, very stuck place. And these days it was hard to drag myself to church. But one weekend when I did not have my girls with me, I decided to go. And I just sat there listening to this boring sermon about faith. But at the end, the pastor threw in this kind of afterthought. And he said, by the way, if you're struggling with your faith, why not ask for more? So I thought, okay, God, I'll play along. And so I closed my eyes, and in that moment of despair, I just prayed a simple prayer. And I said, okay, God, I give up. Like, my plan didn't work. Give me some faith. Well, a few days later, my car got broken into. Somebody smashed my window, stole my laptop, all my work stuff. And I just thought, okay, like what else, God? Like, what else you got for me? And I took my car in for the window repair. And while I was sitting there waiting, I had my iPad with me, and I looked on Amazon to just download a book to kill some time. I just wanted some casual reading material. So on a whim, I downloaded this book. You guys probably recognize it, Proof of Heaven by Evan Alexander. And I didn't know much about near-death experiences or really even believe in them. If anything, I was a skeptic. But as I read, I found my mind being opened. And then a few days later, something happened. It was lunchtime at work. I took my iPad book with me. I went to Boston Market, got my usual chicken and veggies, sat by the window to eat. And I was in the part of the story where Dr. Alexander is describing his experience on the other side. And he's visited by this angelic being who's kind of a guide for him. And she brings him 3 important messages. And those messages are, number 1, you are loved and cherished. Number 2, you have nothing to fear. And number 3, there is nothing you can do wrong. So I stopped on that last one and I read it again. There is nothing you can do wrong. And I read it again and again and again. There is nothing you can do wrong. And I don't know what happened here, but it was like a Zen koan. It just stopped my mind. And I put my fork down and I found I was being flooded with all these questions. Like, what is this message of unconditional love? This is different than anything I've ever learned, even in church. And so I got up from the table, threw my trash out, and I stepped out of that restaurant into the parking lot and into this entirely new universe. Because outside of that parking lot, I got hit by this complete tidal wave of love and bliss. And it was a typical fall day in Dallas, but inside my consciousness, everything was alive. Colors were brighter, sounds were sharper, and there was just vibration and vibrance in everything I saw. And I could literally see the energy connecting the leaves and the trees and the people and the buildings and everything around me. It was just completely saturated with meaning. And so I stood there in this complete state of just stunned awe, just taking it all in. And finally, I got in my car and I sat there and I just sobbed for 10 minutes, just feeling all of that love wash over me. And finally, I rubbed my eyes and I looked back at the door to the restaurant and I thought, holy crap, what was in that chicken? Because like I had no idea what had happened to me, but somehow reading about a near-death experience had triggered a spiritual experience of my own. And so what came after that was about 10 days of just pure bliss, where I just knew there was nothing wrong in the universe. Everything is working exactly as it should. And most importantly, I'm loved just like I am. So my, it's been, I guess, 10 years. It's been a decade since I received this gift, which, by the way, came on the day before my birthday that year. And I could give you a long list of all the ways I've changed and other STEs I've had and that sort of thing. But I think that would feel like I was bragging or somehow taking credit for what the universe had been trying to show me all along. So I'll sum it up and just say, I finally learned through this experience to embrace my worthiness and trust a higher plan. Because not only did the universe let me keep my daughter, but it woke me up to a better version of myself. And so that's my question here. Like, are these experiences available to everyone? Can we all wake up? And I think the answer is yes, because my experience gave me this great hope for the future of humanity. And so as I looked back on it, I recognized some of the key steps that I went through. I think people can use these. I think we all can use these to invite more awakenings into our lives. But the first thing I did was to just let go of control. So my plan failed because I was trying to hang on so tightly to how I thought things were supposed to be or should be in my life. And I had to finally surrender and give up and let the universe do what it already had in mind for me. So second, I asked for help. And I had to finally ask my higher power to say, I need help. Give me some faith. And once I did that, once I trusted the universe to guide me, it started to happen, but it wasn't going to start happening until I let go and asked for that guidance. I embrace it all, light and dark. So I was trying to avoid the darkness in my life by creating a plan for my life. But since that experience, I have learned to let go and just embrace it all, embrace the suffering. Because I think what I've learned is that the power of the universe really rests in non-duality. It rests in remaining open to every part of the experience that we're having here. And so remember, there's nothing that you can do wrong. I think some people will probably have a problem with this statement, but I think the way to think about it is everything is for your growth. There's nothing that's wasted, even the suffering. And so what I came to understand that it wasn't God judging me through my whole life, it was me. I was the one judging me, and I had judged myself as being less than worthy. And what I'm now learning is that I am worthy of that love. And so are you. So you are loved, we're all loved, and because we're loved, we can heal our own wounds. And when we do that, that heals the world. Because here's what I've learned, I think, through this whole experience is when healing happens anywhere, it happens everywhere. because this is how we can change the world. And so what I would encourage all of us to do is don't give up on your spiritual journey. We're all here seeking something higher. Don't stop that pursuit. Keep growing, keep evolving, spread love, work on your own growth and healing. And this is how we change the world for the better. So there's my email address if anyone is interested in reaching out. And I want to thank SAI and Yvonne for inviting me to be here today. It's quite an honor. Thanks to everyone for being here.
Thank you so much, Ken. Wow, your journey was deeply moving, heartfelt, and very inspiring too. Thank you, Ken. And now we are going to questions and answers. So here I have the first question for Dr. Alex. People want to know about, I have two questions right there. I just bring them both together. One is about the etheric food. And the other one is if you have a book or a website that people can access your work and find you.
Okay. No, I don't have any books or a website. For the etheric food, it's interesting. So some of my experiences in those categories, I have hundreds of lucid dreams, which are quite consistent. For etheric food, I've actually had a chance just once where I had a lucid dream, and basically right towards the end of the lucid dream, I spotted that there was this ice cream in this see-through freezer door. And so, you know, as you're navigating through the environment, it's mostly kind of mind operated. So I try to position myself to get there before the lucid dream collapsed. I grabbed the ice cream out, I opened it, and it was like a green ice cream. And again, being a scientist and experimenter, I really wanted to see the texture. Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be sweet? And much to my surprise, you know, that particular ice cream tasted, it was kind of cold. The texture was correct. The only downside was it wasn't quite as sweet as I wanted. But at least that on one account, it seemed like the experience of food can be continued elsewhere.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alex. That was fascinating. I have here a question for Dayna. It says, while you title your book a novel, is it a download of what actually happened?
Hi, actually, there's a few scenes in it that are based on what happened to me, but it's really an inspiration of this awakened civilization that that I was supposed to write about, and that kind of went through their own trajectory like we're going through now, from, you know, I call it the ravaging era. And then they go through enough suffering, and enough people called the wise ones leave the madness and do awakening practices and wake up to who they are. And then it creates a tipping point where the whole planet ends up awakening, and it saves them from extinction. And then, you know, it's this epic adventure fantasy. My main character finds a relic that is, and he has to go to save the earth. And from the ravaging era, something happened. So it's fictionalized, but it's based on this this group of beings, this race of beings that I met, and it's really a metaphor for what we can be on the planet. I'm very committed to spiritual storytelling. I don't think we have enough. I think we have a lot of ego storytelling. And I do think, like, just like Jesus told parables, we need spiritual storytelling as part of our awakening. And that's what I was told. And that's been my mission. So if you want to get a hold of me, awakethenovel.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter and read my book. Let me know what you think. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Dayna. There's a lot of beautiful comments, a lot of happy birthdays for Omar. And there's a question here for Omar, although you already answered in your presentation, maybe you can go a step deeper, because they're asking, do you think your brother is trying to give you a message with all these events? And the answer is, of course, I think he is, but can you talk?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, sorry. No, absolutely. And thank you to everybody that wished me a happy birthday as well. Not only him, but also what it showed me was that, because I forgot to mention, another thing that had 2:16 was even the movie The Matrix was 2 hours and 16 minutes. So that kind of threw me like, okay, so is this all just the Matrix, a creation, right? So the way I was showing, it was almost like when you sign a check, it's not valid until you sign it, right? Or a contract, it's not valid until you sign it. So it was almost like the signature of this creator of this reality that we're in, signing everything, showing me, look it, I signed this, I signed that, I signed that, I signed, you know, I signed every little thing. You went to a pyramid, I signed that too. So they were showing me not only, I mean, it's like me and my brother had agreed, like I said, the worst day of my life. So how could I ever forget the number 216? How would it not get my attention, right? So it's like we had agreed to show, and it's not nothing like, you know, no ego thing, like, oh, I'm special. It was just like, you know, I host a podcast called In a Good Way Podcast. And I've interviewed like someone with an NDE that said what they showed him when he died was he just volunteered, like, okay, I'll do it. So it was almost like, you know, like that. Me and my brother were like I said, okay, we'll do it, you know, and then here we go with this. How can I forget this experience? So it's something like that. It's like showing for anyone that doubts that there's some kind of creation or that we're in some sort of thing, you know, obviously we're here to learn, right? That was another part of the thing, the school and all that. But yeah, and I did write a book about it. I show a lot more detail. It's called 216 and the Secrets of the Universe. I translated it in Spanish as well. And there's an audio book, and it's the second edition. So if anyone does want to get it, make sure you don't get the first edition. Because right after I had finished, that's when I kept getting information. I wrote another 6 chapters within weeks after I had published the first one. So the information just kept coming and kept coming. So
Thank you so much, Omar.
thank you.
I have a question for Ken. What role do you think homelessness plays in our ability to receive that divine intervention?
Homelessness?
Humbleness.
Homeless, yeah, being humble, I guess.
Oh, humble. Okay. That's a great question. So I was raised in this sort of rigid religious environment, Christianity, mostly through my mom's belief system. And I found myself in that framework forever. And that was the programming that I had. And so I had gone down sort of that branch of my tree of growth. And I think what I realized was that I'd gotten so far out on that branch that I was kind of out on a limb and my beliefs weren't supporting me anymore. So I was sort of like backing up to a lower part of the tree where I had to go a different direction. So it was humility ultimately, because I had to give up. I just had so much in my life supporting this, like I'm going to make everything work out the way I think it needs to be and the way society and my parents have told me it's supposed to be. But that wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to let go and be more of a channel for that energy and love rather than something that's holding on and trying to direct it all myself. So yeah, I totally agree. It's humility. It's critical.
Thank you, Ken. And I have a question for everybody here in the panel. Like, do you think that the burdens and the challenges that everyone is experiencing the planet, like I would say the collective is experiencing right now, is a way for all of us or for humanity to wake up? So maybe I can start with Dr. Alex.
Yeah, I think if we look at history, often you find that wherever there's a bottleneck and wherever the breakthroughs in humanity often are directly inversely proportional to the difficulties they encounter. So I would say that yes, often difficult situations often force you to break a pattern and to kind of pause and stop and reconsider a different way. Whereas if you're comfortable and happy, I think there's no reason to change or to think any different. So I think, yes, it is very possible that, like in my own personal life, I really wasn't open to any of this. And as a rational scientist, a materialistic scientist, at least back then, if I was to hear any of this data, I would have just said, it doesn't make sense to me. But because I went through a very difficult part of my life where it forced me to reconsider and start reading and learning, I got opened up to this new field. And now I see reality and even the meaning of life in a completely different way, a very positive one. So yeah, I hope that summarizes it for you.
Yes, thank you. Can we go with Dayna?
Hi, yes. So yeah, one of my teachers, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith says, pain pushes until vision pulls. And pain definitely pushes us to wake up. I mean, Ken's story was totally profound about that process. And I just want to say that the work that I do with my storytelling is I'm trying to have vision, to give a vision of what an awakened planet would look like, what these beings that I met look like, because I think they're our future selves. Honestly, they're extra dimensional. I think these beings are us, and on another dimension, another, this is what's come to me. So trying to tell vision, have visionary stories and a vision of what we can be can take us from the pain pushing us to make us do this, and it being just this bloodbath as we progress, to really coming together with this power and energy that we have as together even right now. If we can just take a moment, and all of us, just for a moment, envision a planet where we know who we are. We sense a oneness with each other. We support each other in these amazing experiences that we're all having. We validate the truth and the light and the possibility and the vision of an awakened humanity on this planet and how that looks. And really, any part of us that is unbelieving, which I deal with this all the time, and doubting because of the madness that seems in the Matrix shows us, to look through it and to shine light on that within us, and that's the healing, and then shine it out for everyone, and we will help awaken the human family.
Thank you so much, Dayna. Can we go with Omar?
Yes. I think what I was always shown was and I'm always careful with the way I say it, because I never want to insult anyone, right? But the way I was shown since a young age, like I said, I was already kind of aware, I was aware since I was little, and then you kind of have to suppress it because everyone looks at you like you're crazy. So I was always shown that about bringing an end to the idea of like that there was a Messiah that's going to come and, fix everything for all of us. So that's kind of one of the things that I always admired or accepted very openly about the native culture, right? Like I still to this day, like I said, when I use sage, I go get my own sage and I give an offering every single time. There was always a balance of we give as much as we take, right? So there's always this kind of balance, and there's accountability in that, right? So I was always shown that and even by, the beings, because the same, right? I was visited by, after the being that had taken me with my brother, they came back every year. They started coming back and they showed me, there were these Palladium beings, and the same, my heart felt like it was going to explode. Like I couldn't shake that feeling for like over 2 months till I was like, okay, I'm still on Earth. I got work to do. I wanted to go with them. I didn't want to be here anymore. I was like, I've never felt love like this. Take me with you, right? But I was always shown that to teach that we have the ability. We don't need someone to come, it's beautiful what they have done in the past, and obviously it didn't work, right? One person dying for everybody's sins obviously didn't change anyone's minds or hearts. So we have to be accountable as individuals. We have to, and we have everything it takes to change the world. We're co-creators. We're creating this reality as we go. We've seen it already. All the proof is there, right? If we want to co-create a building, we do it. If we want to co-create a conference, we do it. Co-created this space right now that we're all in. So we are the co-creators, and we can't change, the future. So that's what I've been shown.
Thank you, Omar. Yes, working together. And Ken, can you please answer?
Yeah, I love what Omar was just saying about co-creation, because that's something I've learned, and like many of us, so these experiences have propelled me on this spiritual journey where I can do nothing but like just looking for information and meaning constantly. But one of the lessons maybe the biggest lessons I got through this whole process was one I didn't want to put on a slide because it's so hard to talk about, but that's non-duality. And it's this concept that this entire experience from joy to suffering is all here for us. And that's how we learn. It's really from those extremes and that polarity, bringing all of that together where that creation happens. But if we're doing what I did and trying to focus, like I'm only going to focus on the positive things and try to ignore everything else, like you're missing a huge part of the spectrum. And so the way I think about it is like that co-creation thing is like, we're all like crystals. Like if you can imagine a crystal with the light or the sunlight shining through it, creating a rainbow, that's like us. So we don't create that light, we refract that light. So it has to be tuned, it has to be turned to the exact direction so that rainbow can come out of there. And so that's what we're doing. We're learning to create that rainbow by accepting that light. But that means accepting all of the light and not just trying to act like we created the light, or we're in control, or that we only want one specific part of that spectrum.
Wow, thank you so much, Ken. What a great way to end this panel. Thank you all. This was an incredible panel. There's so many comments and we could talk forever, but our conference have to continue. So now we go to a break. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you all.